Hey, everybody. Welcome into 4 Down Territory. I'm Kyle Madson, the managing editor of NinersWire.com. Joining me now is Doug Farrar, the managing editor of TouchdownWire.com. And Doug, let's do something a little bit different today. Instead of taking 4 questions, as we normally do, 1 question per down, let's do a mock draft.
Let's do a mock draft.
Instead of trying to fit a mock draft into 4 questions, we're just going to hammer them out. Picks 1 through 31, and we're going to do it live with the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator.
Anarchy in the UK, baby. There it is. Bing, bing. Oh. Thank you to our good friends at Pro Football Focus for all the neat data and the mock draft simulator. And I know you guys have PFF Ultimate, and I know you're ready to share the password with me. Come on. Come on, Sam. Come on, Steve. Anyway.
Yeah, Sam and Steve.
Probably a fruitless endeavor, but nonetheless.
Yeah, it's worth a shot. Why not?
Yeah, it's worth a shot.
All right,
whatever. So go ahead. Real quick, the rules here are Kyle takes the even or the odd numbered picks, and I take the even numbered picks. Trades between teams with even or odd numbered picks can be done by Kyle or myself. We didn't have any sort of intergenerational where we had to consult with each other. There is one big trade coming up, but just to get that out there.
Good tease. So, yeah, when you said, Kyle, you're odd, I was like, yes, I know that, but what picks am I going to do? I didn't realize that you meant just do those picks. So let's get this started. The Carolina Panthers on the clock, number 1 overall. I know there's been some buzz about Bryce Young, but I am sticking with the CJ Stroud pick here. I do think he's going to be the guy for Carolina. He is a prototypical big pocket passer. He's mobile enough to maneuver around the pocket, and some of the playmaking ability, that secondary playmaking ability we saw against Georgia in the college football playoff, that was to me kind of the tipping point of like, he can do that effectively. And frankly, I think he has the highest floor, and Carolina could compete in that division with him this year. So I'm going with CJ Stroud.
Well, and you look at the kinds of quarterbacks Frank Reich prefers to work with. It's bigger guys. It's pocket passers who have some second reaction ability. I mean, you're hearing more and more about Bryce Young right now going to Carolina, which just confirms to me that it's lying season and CJ Stroud's going to be the first overall pick. So there you go. That's how this works, guys.
Trying to get that trade up, just squeeze that little extra value out.
Yep. So with the second overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft, the Houston Texans take Bryce Young, quarterback, Alabama. Not a consolation prize at all. He comes into the NFL basically the same size as Doug Flutie, which is kind of scary. But everything else, check. Playmaking ability, arm talent, not just arm strength, ability to throw to all levels of the field. He can pretty much do anything else you want except be big. And the way he is able to evade contact, kind of fold up before he gets hit, I'm not really worried about that. His one injury, Drew Sanders from Arkansas was chasing him to the sideline, and he put his arm out to break his fall when Sanders was tackling him, and he hurt his shoulder. I mean, that could happen to Josh Allen. It could happen to anybody, no matter how big you are. So, yeah, I'm not worried about any of that stuff. I think you take Bryce Young at number 2, Houston Texans, and you have your franchise quarterback of the future.
I want to ask you a question just real quick on Bryce Young.
Yeah.
You've been in this business and doing this for a long time. Do you think, maybe not your evaluation necessarily, but the NFL's evaluation, do you think that Bryce Young is a first round pick or even in consideration to be a first round pick even 10 years ago?
I think his abilities, Michael Vick wasn't big. Deshaun Watson wasn't big. Lamar Jackson isn't that big. Robert Griffin III was taken 2nd overall 11 years ago. And he got hurt when Haloti Ngata fell on him, but when a house falls on you, it hurts.
Yeah.
I think his skills are pretty era transcendent, to invent a hyphenated word here. I think the arguments, like would a Matt Ryan or a Phillip Rivers go in the first round with the need for second reaction ability? I've had this discussion with a lot of people, and that to me is more where the era cuts off. Like if you're just a pocket guy, how far can you go? I think we're finding that out with Mac Jones, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Sure.
But I think that's where the cutoff is. It's more It's more, can you do things outside the pocket, because that's what the NFL needs.
Okay, very good. Let's get to the Cardinals at the number 3 spot. Now, there's been a lot of buzz throughout this week about teams trying to trade up to that number 3 spot, and I believe I believe Adam Schefter reported actually this morning that there have been 6 teams that have called to try and move up to that spot. Maybe it's for a quarterback. Maybe it's for the player that I have Arizona taking here. And frankly, I think Arizona can't pass on. If they get a huge haul and there's a bunch of players they like, then okay, I get it. But
I mean, I can feel like if the Seahawks or the Lions or the Raiders, Falcons, not the Bears because they have Justin Fields, but we think the Colts are going to take Anthony Richardson at 4. We desperately want Anthony Richardson because his upside is thermonuclear. We're going to leapfrog the Colts to do it. Or the Colts then come back and say, hey, we'll give you an even bigger haul to move up and block this other thing. I mean, I can see it, but if I'm the Cardinals, Jonathan Gannon, their new head coach, former defensive coordinator, he's got like nothing on that line. Right. Nothing. So your pick, I think, is well situated.
Yeah, so I'm going Will Anderson. I'm going chalk here, the defensive end from Alabama. I think he was my favorite player to watch. I just think he might be pound for pound the best player in this class, just the best football player overall. And Jonathan Gannon knows the value. You just mentioned it. He knows the value of a game-wrecking defensive line, and I think Will Anderson can start to establish that for him. I think he's going to be a really good player right away. And again, maybe there's a huge haul of picks that they get, and they think they can build out a really good team with those. That's great. But man, if I'm Arizona, I'm staying at 3, and I'm taking a potentially foundational edge rusher.
Well, if I'm the Cardinals, I take the haul because I don't know if there's a team with less talent in the NFL right now. So if you get, a bunch of picks, you probably do that. But yeah, Will Anderson to me, upside is TJ Watt. He's got, he's not quite as bendy, not quite as flexible, but he's got a bit more power. His speed to power move, except when he was facing Darnell Wright from Tennessee, then it was a problem. But yeah, he's the full package. Now, he's not a guy, and this when we get into the Tyree Wilson, Will Anderson discussion, I'm doing my edge rusher rankings right now. And honestly, if I project 1 or 2 years forward, I almost take Wilson over Anderson.
Interesting. How come?
Close. And Wilson's ability to play inside is where he just demolishes it. He does stuff to guards that is not safe for work. So I can see taking... we had the floor ceiling argument with Stroud. I think Anderson has the highest floor. I think Wilson's ceiling might be a couple 3 floors above. So that's also something to consider. Okay, Kyle, number 4, we got us a trade.
I love it.
Well, it's not technically a trade. What it is I'm going to set this up here so everyone can see it. So the Colts are going to give their 4th overall pick and next year's 1st round pick to the Baltimore Ravens. And what they're going to do in my hypothetical scenario is the Colts are going to sign Lamar Jackson to a 4-year, $250 million offer sheet, $200 million guaranteed. The Ravens are going to refuse to match it in the 5-day period. And that gives the Colts Lamar Jackson, gives the Colts Lamar Jackson and the Ravens the 4th overall pick this year, the 22nd, which they already had, and next year's Indianapolis 1st round pick. So we're going to enforce this trade because I don't know if PFF's going to think I'm crazy for doing this. And we're going to go back to draft a player. And the Ravens just lost the most freakishly athletic quarterback in the NFL. So they're going to draft the next most freakishly athletic quarterback in the NFL in the person of Anthony Richardson. Yes, everyone knows he needs development as a passer. He played 1 year as a starter at Florida, and he improved as the season went on. And as I said in last week's 4 Down Territory, he is built like Khalil Mack. He runs like Michael Vick, and he throws like Randall Cunningham. We've never seen this before.
It's wild.
So you take the upside. You just do. I don't have any argument against it because he's him. He's one of one, and you just move on.
Does the Odell Beckham Jr. signing by Baltimore change your mind at all on how they're going to operate with Lamar Jackson?
It's a guy coming off an injury. He's getting older. He probably gets 60 catches for 800 yards and like 5 touchdowns. I mean, I don't know how much that moves the needle.
Sure.
We'll get to who they're taking 22, and I think when Lamar sees this, would be like, oh yeah, second verse team is the first. You know, I don't. I think the only thing that changes the landscape for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens is the contract that Lamar Jackson wants. We can, you know, put all sorts of window dressing on it, but that's the way it is.
Let's move to the Seattle Seahawks at the number 5 spot. I think they're a really interesting team to watch because I think there's a ton of directions they can go. But in our mock, Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman from Georgia, falls to them at 5. Peter King actually wrote in his Football Morning in America column that he wouldn't be surprised if Carter went 5th or 25th.
Yeah.
I'd be pretty surprised if he went 25th.
I'd be pretty surprised if he went 25th. I don't think, I mean, Drew Rosenhaus has said we're not meeting with teams outside of the top 10. And,
right.
You know, Jalen Carter is the best player in this class. He is Chris Jones. He's will wreck your offense, and he'll do it from multiple levels. And the off-field stuff, pro day, yeah.
And the thing that jumped out to me is you're watching him, and there's 3 or 4 reps, and I'm like, oh, I thought he played with more power than this. And then it's like, oh, there's the power rep. Like, oh my God, there's just nothing he can't really do. And I don't want to compare him to Aaron Donald because that's just such a crazy ceiling to put on a player. But he's in like that. I'm typically anti like defensive tackle this early, but I think he can just be a game wrecking player from the interior. And whether you're getting a game wrecking defensive lineman on the edge or inside, like I think those players matter. And
I would argue that today's NFL interior pressure is more important because there's so much more quick game.
Yeah, you know? Absolutely. I'm right there.
A and B is a straight line. If you have to wait all the time for your edge guy to get around, your cornerbacks are going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think Carter, you stick him in the middle of defensive line. And the thing I do think he might be a little bit like Aaron Donald is Donald can rush from anywhere. He's not going to play the edge all the time. But if Pete Carroll wants to get sadistic and kick him out to the edge here and there, I think he can be an effective player from there too. I just don't know what he's incapable of on a football field. And this is a great fit for Seattle at 5.
Well, he's taller than Donald, so he doesn't have quite that leverage advantage, but he's so violent with his hands. And he is able to, he's got this lateral movement to like, you know, he'll set a guard up this way and then just zoom around him. Kalijah Cansey, we're going to talk about later, has this even more kind of freakish. So that's where my Chris Jones comp came in. And Chris Jones is as good as anybody in the NFL right now, including Aaron Donald, including Jeffrey Simmons, including any, you know, Dexter Lawrence, whoever you want to, you know, Quinnen Williams, whoever you want to put up there. You know, if you did a redraft and told teams they could get Chris Jones 5th overall, I think they'd be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, 100%.
So with the 6th overall pick, Kyle, the Lions of Detroit are, you know, they got Emmanuel Mosley, they got Cam Sutton, they got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So they really did a lot in free agency to set up their secondary. I don't think that precludes them because we're talking about Jeff Okudah. I don't know. But I will say that I don't think it precludes them from taking a cornerback at 6. And so then you go, okay, is it Christian Gonzalez from Oregon? Is it Devon Witherspoon from Illinois? Is it Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State? I could see going either way. Sure. I think Witherspoon is my pick here, and he's my CB1 because he combines Gonzalez's smoothness with Porter's ability to match and play man and just lock you down. He has both things, and it's unusual for a guy with that much aggressiveness, that much press ability to have his foot movement outside or in the slot. So with the 6th overall pick, the Lions are taking Devon Witherspoon, cornerback from Illinois.
I like how outwardly Devon Witherspoon thinks or knows he's the best player on the field at all times.
Oh yeah.
Like I love that in a corner. It was one of my favorite things about Richard Sherman. I think Devon Witherspoon has some of that. And I'm with you. Like there's I think an argument for any of those 3 corners to go there.
I mean, if you're playing press man, and we'll get to this later. Well, if you're playing press man, I think you want Deonte Banks from Maryland because his snaps and press man are just hilarious. Like bust after bust after bust for the receivers. They get nowhere.
All right. So let's move on to number 7, where I have the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they're one of the teams that's going to try desperately to trade up.
Yeah.
Because Josh McDaniels has said they're going to try and find a franchise quarterback, but there's not going to be 5 of those guys in the top 10. And then he talks about, with the process and this and that. So maybe they go a non-quarterback route here and take a swing for one next year. But I have them going with Will Levis from Kentucky. I know your favorite guy.
Oh God, the tape is so weird. And I can see this. I can see this happening. I could see the Lions taking him. I mean, because big guy, big arm, everyone loves it. So
right, the physical traits are all there, and
you can make all the throws, including the ones that will get your coach fired.
Right. So I know they signed Jimmy Garoppolo, but that's not a long-term thing. Like it's just it's not. So I do think Levis could probably benefit from taking a year, not so much to like, I know he needs to improve on his accuracy, especially in the short areas, but I think more so Vegas can bolster their offensive line and improve the playmakers around him, because I think that's the stuff that's really going to matter for Levis is, can you give him time? Can you give him players that he can distribute the ball to? Like I know they have Hunter Renfrow and they have Devontae Adams, but I think they need to get a little bit better in that spot. So I think Levis, this is an okay landing spot for him, and I think the Raiders need a franchise quarterback, and this is the only one left. I think that they'd be comfortable taking it.
I think you have 2 quarterbacks in this class that are very toolsy and very undefined, and that's Richardson and Levis. And the problem with Levis is that he's had so much time to figure it out. 2 seasons as a starter at Kentucky, couldn't really get anything done at Penn State. It's like, well, how much time do we need here? Sure. I'm willing to forgive Richardson's rawness because, again, 1 season as a starter in college. So you're taking a risk. With Levis, I'm starting to think, well, maybe this is just okay. He didn't have great receivers, offensive line. Yeah, but you isolate the throws and the processing, and the processing is what drives me nuts. Sure. And it's just why he's so uneven. It's like, well, how much time are we going to need here? I'm not trying to bag on Levis. I'm just looking at, okay, where has the improvement been shown? Right. And that's what I don't see.
Yeah, trying to project him and his ceiling is not particularly easy, but he's also just like football guy. And I could just absolutely see coaching staff, scouts just falling in love in meetings with him and being like, oh yeah, this is the guy that's going to lead our team.
You know who else is a football guy?
Who's that?
Blake Bortles, which kind of where I'm going with this.
Okay. I think
there's a Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz sort of thing here that I don't know.
I am workshopping a Blake Bortles take that Blake Bortles was born like 8 years too early.
Possibly.
All right, let's move on to, speaking of 8, let's move on to number 8 with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes. With the 8th overall pick, the Atlanta Falcons, who did a bit in free agency to improve their defensive line, but had the second fewest sacks, the second fewest pressures, both behind the Chicago Bears last year, take the aforementioned Tyree Wilson, edge, Texas Tech. Here's what I think is going to happen with Tyree Wilson. He's 6'14", weighs about 500 pounds, runs a 2.340. I might be exaggerating here, but not by much.
Nope.
You remember when Jason Pierre-Paul came into the NFL and that first year it was like, okay, he's raw, but he's getting it. And the second year he had like 19 sacks and he kept going like that for a while. I think that's Tyree Wilson. I think he takes kind of a redshirt developmental year to finish everything out. And then everyone's just in a whole lot of trouble. It is rare to see a guy this rangy, standing up on the edge, not even with his hand down. And yes, he's raw, but he is, I've done a lot of tape on him. He is utterly relentless to the pocket. I mean, he will not stop. He's like the Terminator. He just keeps going. So I think the Falcons, would they want to look quarterback? Yeah, I think so. They have needs all over the place, but I think right here is where your edge rush sort of redemption starts. Maybe it doesn't happen all the way in the first year, but from year 2 on, boy, I think this guy's going to be something.
Grady Jarrett led the Falcons in pressures last year. This is according to our friends at PFF. With 45.
Yeah.
Lorenzo Carter was their number 1 edge rusher in terms of pressure with 33.
Yeah.
Like that's, man, they need help there.
They need him.
Yeah. I think Tyree Wilson is, you mentioned his motor it's not only that he doesn't stop, but it's not like there were a couple players I was watching who like had that really high motor, but it's like, okay, they got stoned at the top of their rush and then the quarterback just kind of ran into them.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, they didn't quit on the play, but they also didn't really do anything. Tyree Wilson, like, not only never quits on a play, but I feel like he just never slows down. Like, there's just never a point where it's like, man, he just got stuck on that play.
The only time he's slow, and when his NFL coaches figure this out, it's going to be a real hack for him. He comes off the ball late a lot. And that's, obviously if the blocker has time to get get his hands up, you're at a disadvantage. So he's doing all this ridiculous stuff coming off the ball late. His coaches are going to get his internal clock, situated, and then, watch out. He's like the defensive Anthony Richardson as far as just pure, oh my God, who is this guy?
All right, number 9 with the Chicago Bears. This was tough because I think they need offensive line help. And I think anybody you ask, that's going to be their number one need. Yep. And keeping Justin Fields upright is like paramount.
Job one.
However, Christian Gonzalez is really good at football.
Yes, he is.
And the Chicago Bears could use some secondary help. And he falls to them at number 9. I think that's the kind of player where it's like, okay, scrap the needs. This is best player available because this is a day one Pro Bowl caliber corner. I think that's Christian Gonzalez. They could definitely go with the tackle, but he's big, long, athletic, 21 pass breakups and 4 interceptions in 30 college games. I think he's just right away going to be a really good player. Maybe not a Pro Bowler in year one, but could definitely a game-changing player for Chicago's defense.
I think it fits what the Bears do. He's very smooth. He's very practiced. He's very technique sound. He's not aggressive. He doesn't have that. Well, I don't want to get in his head, but what shows on the field is not a killer mentality. He wants to go after the ball as opposed to beating a guy up. So there's a lot of value to that. Now, if you're more interested in the alpha dog, pressing your face, you want Witherspoon or Porter or maybe Deontay Banks. But if you want a guy who's going to come in, play man match, a lot of single high, put him on an island, especially to the boundary, he'll just erase everybody. So, great pick there.
Yeah. Move on to number 10.
Number 10. This is something I discussed last week on 4 Down Territory. I'm going to do it again because if you're the Eagles, you already have Jalen Hurts as your quarterback. You have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith as your 2 primary receivers. You have Dallas Goedert as your tight end. Well, now, if I'm Howie Roseman, with that pick I got from the Saints, I'm taking Jackson Smith and Jigba, putting him in the slot. Good luck at NFC East because I don't know what you're going to do.
I think the only player here that would make me shake my head harder, not because in just like a what do you do with this kind of thing, is if they go with Bijan Robinson from Texas.
I considered that. I considered that.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to add...
Last week when we were talking about like if the Lions drafted Anthony Richardson and Bijan Robinson and the NFL would have to shut down. Kind of the same deal. Yeah.
Yeah, and just, I mean, this, like, for like the Smith and Jigba pick, I have no notes. But just the fact that the Eagles went from the NFC title game, or I'm sorry, the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They went from the Super Bowl to having a top 10 pick. It just doesn't, I don't know if it really matters who they take here. They're going to add a really good player. You trust Howie Roseman to draft a productive player in the top 10.
He's pretty good at what he does, I think.
Yeah, and Smith and Jigba is just, he's the best receiver in the class, I think.
Yes, and he can do more outside than people give him credit for. I think if he had been healthy last year, we would have seen more of that. But
yeah. Number 11 for the Titans, to me, this is a layup with Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle from Northwestern, falling to them at number 11.
Insert your favorite left tackle here, basically.
Right. Like that's literally it. And the thing I like about Skoronski is I also think he can play inside pretty effectively.
Yep.
And the Titans just need help on the offensive front, but mainly they need to replace Taylor Lewan. I think Skoronski steps in and is a capable left tackle right away. And I think you can just plug him in for the next decade and he's going to do a nice job. And if he's not working there, you can kick him inside and I think he can be a good guard. So that's who I'm going with for Tennessee here. and I feel pretty good about it.
It's interesting that his predecessor, Rashawn Slater, when he came out, everyone said, "Oh, arm length, he should be a guard." And I'm watching his tape, and I'm going, "What are you guys smoking?"
No.
He's a natural left tackle. I think Skoronski is too. And the thing about Skoronski that I think has some people devaluing him is he just makes everything look easy. He's so consistent, and there are positions where you don't want guys to be boring. If my offensive tackle is boring, I'm fine with that. I'll give him $20 million a year to be boring, because boring means your quarterback's happy and healthy and throwing touchdowns. Which is
and the other thing is, what did he measure at the combine? Like 6'4". Let me pull up his measurements here. Hang on.
Yeah, people are more concerned about the arm length than the height or the weight.
Yeah, so 6'4", 313, the 32.25-inch arms versus a player like Paris Johnson from Ohio State or Broderick Jones from Georgia, who are the more stereotypical, big
Anton Harrison, Oklahoma. Yeah, those guys.
Yeah, that's but I mean, Skoronski's just good, man. Plug him in and let him play.
Yeah, and that's a run-heavy offense, so you're not going to be taking 700 dropbacks.
Right.
I think he's fine in run blocking. I think that matters less when you're run blocking. So yeah, I think he'd be fine at left tackle for the Titans. Number 12. So we have Bryce Young at quarterback. We talked about Bryce Young's height. One of the few problems Bryce Young had in Alabama was throwing deep over the middle. So how about, to a receiver-light team, we add Quentin Johnston from TCU, the height guy who not great hands, but has some deep ability and can just demolish people after the catch. We saw that in the Michigan game. He is an inconsistent receiver. He needs development, but at his top, he could be something else. So I'm taking the risk there on development, because I think with Bryce Young, you don't have to take the risk on development. He's developed. So you can put skilled players around him that aren't quite there, and he'll start to help them be better.
And Houston's not anticipating probably being very good this year. And so Johnston can just play and figure it out a little bit.
Well, I think they want to be competitive. They made some good moves in free agency. They hired D'Amico Ryans as their head coach. Don't tell D'Amico Ryans, you know this. You're in San Francisco. Don't tell him he doesn't want to be competitive. No. He'll break your head.
No, and I'm sure they want to be competitive, and especially in the AFC South, you get a couple of things to go your way, and all of a sudden you're in the division hunt. But my thing is, they're not going to like Trey Lance, Quentin Johnston, where it's like, dude, you just can't play. We're trying to win a Super Bowl.
No.
They're going to let him go through what he needs to go through.
And he'll make enough splash plays to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
And they traded Brandon Cooks. They got Nico Collins and the Pips, and it's kind of like, you need a guy in there. So go get him.
Yeah. And all the other receivers in this draft, and we'll get to this a little bit later, are all like 6 foot and under.
Yeah.
Like he's the only real size threat here. So I like that. I like that.
The quarterbacks are all, except for a couple of guys, are like 5'11" and over.
Yeah. Right.
we reverse course here.
A weird juxtaposition for sure. The New York Jets are on the clock at number 13, and they're in kind of an interesting spot because I think that they could definitely go with a wide receiver here, but I'm not sure a rookie wide receiver with Aaron Rodgers is going to be the best move for them. So
this pick, by the way, may wind up being the Packers when all is said and done.
That's a very strong point.
There is also, but if it stays with the Jets, you're about to take one of my favorite players in this entire draft class.
Yeah, man. Brian Branch, the safety out of Alabama.
Set it and forget it.
I'm a Niners guy, so I'm gonna use a Niners player here. Jimmy Ward was for Robert Saleh, the do everything safety. He could play deep and erase deep throws. He could come down into the box in run support. You could kick him out to the nickel. There are reps from 2019 where Jimmy Ward is locking up Cooper Kupp as a slot corner.
Yep.
And I just think Brian Branch is that type of player. Just stick him in the back end of your defense and have a ball. He's excellent and the best safety in this class.
My comp for him was a guy who came out of Nick Saban's defense and played with his first NFL team of what he did at Alabama, which is basically 6 different positions. And then got it on a second NFL team and said, we're going to make you a free safety. And he immediately became a top 5 free safety in the NFL. And that's Micah Fitzpatrick. That's who he is.
I like that comp.
I think I had him as my number 1 safety in my position rankings. And I could have put him head on a list of, I could have put him top 6 corner. If I had done a slot defender thing, you probably would have been number 1 there.
Yeah.
I think if you make him a free safety for 800 snaps, your deep third is just fine. And that's so valuable these days. So, yeah,
Yes.
I have no problem with that
Yeah.
at all. Okay, the New England Patriots, who apparently there's some friction between Bill Belichick and Mac Jones. Who do you think is going to survive that one? Never a good place to be, but let's assume for the moment that New England isn't ready to reset at quarterback, and instead they deal with the offensive line that needs a lot of help. And I am going to take the aforementioned Paris Johnson Jr., has the arm length, has the strength, a little bit of work to do on technique, but not that much. And he can just erase guys. And that's what Mac Jones needs, because he's not an outside the pocket second reaction mover.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to need help between Matt Patricia running your offense and I don't know who playing tackle. It wasn't that great. So let's kind of start to turn that around.
Yeah, no notes. As long as the Patriots aren't drafting a wide receiver, I think they're doing okay.
Yeah.
So mostly because they just can't get that position right. So
yeah, do it later.
Yeah, give Mac Jones time and let him try and pick a defense apart.
Yep.
15th, the Green Bay Packers on the clock. I'm going with Nolan Smith, the edge rusher out of Georgia, a guy we talked about last week. And you mentioned, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that he'd be fine in a 4-3, but his better fit is probably as an outside rusher in a 3-4.
We're going to get, when we get to Will McDonald and where Will McDonald goes. Will McDonald, the fourth for Iowa State, played 6'4", 240 inside the tackles in a bunch of 3-man fronts. You don't want to do that. Just come on.
So I think Nolan Smith, you plug him in.
This is a good fit. Nolan Smith to the Packers is a good fit for that exact reason.
Yeah, you plug him in as a pass rushing outside linebacker and let him go get 10 sacks a season. Like he is athletically just a freak. 6'2",
and he's stronger than you might think given his size.
That was okay. So I went in thinking, okay, he's not going to be able to stay on the field for 3 downs. Like he's not going to be able to stay on the field in run situations, but he plays so much bigger than his size as a run stopper. I think he could genuinely just set an edge and be on the field for 3 downs right away as an effective pass rusher. You're not losing anything with him as a run defender. I think he's an excellent player to go at 15.
They also have a lot of young guys in that defense, and it sounds weird to say for a rookie, but he can come in and be a leader right away. When he suffered that torn pec, he stayed with the team and became kind of an ad hoc coach.
Yes.
All the way to the national championship. He wasn't pouting and gosh darn it, I got hurt and blah, 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 my future. He's like, hey, I am here to help. And one of the smartest players in this class. And I think as long as you keep him out of the Will McDonald purgatory thing, which I don't why. I think that's a great fit. Absolutely.
Cool. Number 16.
Okay.
Washington Commanders.
So I'm trying to fit player and scheme here. I have absolutely no idea from week to week what defense Jack Del Rio is going to throw out of a dump truck and roll onto the field. That's Ron Rivera's problem. I do know that if you want to play press man, if you want a guy who can also play off and will be aggressive against top receivers, you take Deonte Banks from Maryland, maybe the most underrated quarterback in this class, and you're cooking with gas there. Really like his aggressiveness. I like his press demeanor. He will give stuff up deep, but that's kind of a result of, he doesn't play. He's not given the benefit of off and being able to catch up. He is going to track and match his target, his assignment from the very first step. And if you can do it that well, it's a valuable sub skill that his NFL team will benefit from, I think, greatly. And, as I said, schematic schisms, the more you can press, the more you can hopefully kind of transcend that. Yeah,
no doubt. I have another cornerback going to Pittsburgh at number 17.
Yes, you do. Very similar in temperament and style.
Yeah, and again, this is another spot where I could see Pittsburgh going with an offensive tackle here. But I just think Joey Porter Jr. at 17 is just it makes sense. Joey Porter Jr. going to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But it's just an incredible value. You mentioned he could go at number 6 or whenever Devon Witherspoon went.
Mhm.
So I 6'2.5", 193 pounds, 34-inch arms.
He's got longer wingspan than some offense. I think his wingspan is longer than Peter Skoronski's.
It is.
That's
like,
nuts.
By a lot.
That doesn't make
substantially. 32 and a quarter inch arms for Peter Skoronski, 34 for Joey Porter at 6'2.5". That's crazy. And not only does he have all these elite physical skills, like just his size, but he moves really fluidly.
Yeah, he does.
He uses his length effectively, which is not something you see all the time from cornerbacks. And I just think, given his pedigree, given his physical tools, plug him in Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, I think you're going to wind up with a really, really good player.
Yeah, he moves more fluidly than you would expect because it's biology. If you have a guy that tall and that gangly with the limbs all over the place, it just takes an extra millisecond to get everything in line. You can tell he's been coached well. He's developed that. He will, bigger corners get lost sometimes against the Wes Welker types, the Cooper Kupp types. But he's better at that than you might imagine. I think that's a great pick for them.
Yeah.
Okay. I worked for Football Outsiders for like 10 years. This is going to get me kicked out of the analytics community, and I don't care because with the 18th overall pick, everybody, the Detroit Lions are going to select Bijan Robinson, halfback, Texas. Okay. Plus runner, broke over 100 tackles last season, which I think is the most of any collegiate running back in the PFF era. Plus blocker, plus receiver. You have a quarterback in Jared Goff whose ceiling is right here all the time. He needs play action. He needs pre-snap motion. He will benefit from a running back who can become as much of the epicenter of his offense as he is, similar to what Saquon Barkley was able to do for Daniel Jones. So, yeah, running backs don't matter. Don't take them in the first round. We were discussing this last week, Kyle. You don't get Bijan Robinson's talent in the third round.
Nope.
You don't. If you want this guy, you have to take him here. And I think the Lions are very smart for doing so.
Yeah. And it's not like he caught how many, hang on, I just had it up. He caught 19 balls last year, 26 year before that, 15 as a freshman. Those aren't all swing passes in school.
No, he can run routes.
Yes. He is a bona fide, like, Christian McCaffrey type. Like, yeah, you can split him out and he's going to be a receiver for you. That's where I think, like, if you're going to invest in a running back, I understand the pushback on not wanting to use a first round pick on one, but Bijan Robinson to me is just not a quote unquote like running back in the way we think of a running back. And this is as cheap as you're going to get a player of his skill set and his caliber. So
and if he doesn't to his fifth-year option, or he does, and you don't want to do anything beyond that, but he gets you, he's a difference in 3 playoff appearances and maybe an NFC Championship game as opposed to not. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, make it happen.
You told me I will do that.
I honestly, I would be really surprised if on draft night he falls to 18. I think he's.
We discussed the Eagles maybe staying at 10 or trading down a little bit, and how are you going? Yeah, that would be sick.
Yeah, yep. I could totally see it because he is just a game-changing player on the ground and through the air.
When you're that good at a supposedly fungible, unimportant position, it tends to remove the fungibility and the unimportance of the position to a greater or lesser degree.
Yes. Number 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't believe they'll be taking a running back, even if Bijan Robinson falls all the way to them. I have them going with Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle from Georgia. I think he needs a little bit of time to develop. There's just a couple of reps where he looks clunky.
He needs some refinement. He's more of a mauler than he is a pure technician, but that's okay.
Yeah, he gets pushed around a little bit, but I think I'm going to bet on his size, and I'm going to bet on the fact that he started 19 games in 3 years, including 1 year that was last year as a full-time starter where he started 15 games for Georgia. I'm just going to bet on his size and his athleticism and think that he's going to be a good player for a Bucs team that can let him develop. I don't think they would tell you they're rebuilding, but that's kind of where they're at. They don't have a left tackle. You can plug him in. You can let him learn on the fly. Get him a year in an NFL weight room, and I think in a couple years you're going to have a really good player with Broderick Jones.
He's a guy I could almost see becoming a better guard. I think it would be a
interesting
tackle. I think he would be a fantastic guard, like a first-round guard.
Okay.
But
I can see that.
Speaking of size, the Seattle Seahawks with the 20th overall pick, which is the one they didn't get by fleecing the Broncos for Russell Wilson. Ouch. This is one of my things that just drives me nuts. Over and over and over, smaller defensive tackles are given short shrift. In the draft, in free agency. John Randall, Geno Atkins, Aaron Donald, Grady Jarrett. How many of these guys have to pop under 6 foot, under 300 pounds? When are we going to understand that low man wins? Leverage is important when you combine it with speed and a fierce athletic demeanor. Remember, this guy utterly destroyed the combine. At 20, I'm giving Pete Carroll, Kalijah Kancey, and I'm saying hello to the rest of the NFC West because your quarterbacks now have serious problems. This guy is a block of concrete moving at a very high speed. One of my favorite players to watch on tape in this class, just overall.
Yeah, Kalijah Kancey and Jalen Carter would be just a nightmare.
Yeah. I took Kancey here because and we were alternating picks. I don't see them taking Carter because I think their concerns will outweigh the upside. But even if you want to do that, Kancey can also play on the outside. So if you wanted to put those two guys and then have Uchenna Owosu and Draymond Jones outside, ouch.
Man. So does Kancey's arm length scare you at all? 30 and 5/8 arms.
There are times when, he has to strike the first punch. He always has to strike the first punch. If he's late on anything, he will get overwhelmed. But when he does, his speed to power stuff is so good that he won't just go around double teams. He will slice through them. Now, if he's late, yes, that's where the arm length shows up. But I didn't see it as a serious recurring problem to any.
Okay.
It wouldn't be the thing that I can't take him in the first round because he has short arms, and this is where it shows up.
Okay. Number 21, the Los Angeles Chargers on the clock. I've got Miles Murphy, the defensive end from Clemson, going to them. I originally had Lucas Van Ness because I thought Murphy was gone a lot sooner. I just kind of lost track, to be totally honest. And I just, 6'5", 268. He's got good athleticism off the edge, but I think you can kick him inside as well. I just really like everything about Miles Murphy as a defensive end, and I think you put him in a defense with Brandon Staley on a team that needs some edge help. I think Murphy fits really well here, and I think he can be an impactful player right away.
They need edge help. They also, with Staley, and it's this, it's personnel, but it's also the light box thing, the too high thing. They're through the Staley era, they're one of the worst defenses against the run. And so you can kick Murphy inside. He's more of an outside guy. But you can also address that later in the draft. But yeah, it's not just the edge ability. He needs a bit of refinement in his hands, but 90% of the edge rushers I watch don't know how to use their hands in college. It's just
right.
Apparently not something that's taught. I like that pick. I think it's a good fit for what they do.
I'm big on betting on size and athleticism with my defensive ends.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah. Number 22, the Baltimore Ravens on the clock, Doug.
Yes. So now the Ravens have Anthony Richardson to develop. They need a top receiver to pair with him. And since this is the Ravens, you know what that means. We need a receiver. Let's go draft a tight end.
It's the perfect Ravens pick.
However, if you watch Kincaid, he's my TE1. Reminds me a lot of Travis Kelce coming out of Cincinnati. Contested catch, yards after catch, can really, and this is where the Kelce comps come in, the way he sits in zones and makes himself present to the quarterback. I think this is a guy you want, and maybe more than most receivers in this class will help a young quarterback. So yes, we're making jokes about the Ravens, and yes, the Ravens have earned it by taking all these tight ends when they need receivers, but I think the Kincaid pick would be a really nice fit for, hey, if Lamar comes back, that would work. If Richardson, then that's also a good thing for them.
For me, Dalton Kincaid is the best tight end in this class by like a lot. And I know that Michael Mayer from Notre Dame and Luke Musgrave from Oregon State, like I know that they're in the mix, and Dalton Kincaid is the only player that I'm like, I would definitely take that guy round one.
Yeah.
Because I think if you're going to be a tight end in round one,
Mayer's more like a Zach Ertz or a Jason Witten. He's got some explosiveness, but not at the same level. Musgrave is more sort of the split out big receiver, and that's fine too. I just think Kincaid is more refined in those receiving tools.
Yeah, you have to, if you're taking a tight end in round one, for me, they have to be like a high level producer as a receiver.
You better be ready to go.
Yeah. I like Kincaid a lot, and like I said, it's the perfect Ravens pick.
Yep.
Just dynamite.
So on to the Vikings at 23, and you're taking a receiver that I had to search because he's so low in the PFF projections. Not that I always agree with the PFF projections. Yeah, Will Levis like fourth. But please explain yourself, sir. Jalen Hyatt, a receiver from Tennessee, going to the Vikings, 23 overall. Are they going to switch him to cornerback? Because that's what they need.
No, I'm sticking with the receiver here, opposite Justin Jefferson, because hang on. Jalen Hyatt, I think fits better than Jordan Addison or Zay Flowers or any of the other receivers in this class. I think you can plug in Jalen Hyatt. He has the speed to stretch the field vertically.
Home run speed. Absolute home run speed.
Yes. And he's not big. I think he's 6 foot, but he can change the game with his speed. I think he can change the game with some of the stuff he does underneath. And I just think of all the receivers that you have to pair with Justin Jefferson, I think he's there. I know there are some people who are really down on him. I'm willing to take or make a first round bet on him because of how I think he fits alongside Justin Jefferson, and he gives Kirk Cousins a deep option. So that's what I'm going with.
Kirk throws deep a lot. I think the main issue people have with Hyatt and Hendon Hooker, by the way, is the air raid /spread /veer nature of Tennessee's offense. And I've said this about Hooker all through this process. You have to isolate the player out of the scheme. How do the tools translate?
Right.
The offense isn't transferable, the player is. I think Hyatt's just fine in that regard. So yeah, I wouldn't. They're just so corner light, but maybe they fix that later.
Maybe. I don't know. I get the need at corner, but they lose Adam Thielen. I could definitely see a corner there as well.
Kirk's got to throw to somebody.
Yeah. Number 24, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Jacksonville Jaguars, who ranked 30th in pass defense DVOA in 2022 and did very little to nothing to address that in the offseason. Despite this negligence, I'm giving them Cam Smith, the cornerback from South Carolina. Great in man, great in press, great in off. I don't know that he does anything like incredibly well, but he just does everything right. There aren't a lot of dings on this guy. He's not, he doesn't get lost in space. He's got match feet. He's not too light. He's not too aggressive. He just comes in and does everything like that. So, and that's the Jaguars need. They need corners who can come in and just play right away.
I think that's something that gets underrated a little bit in draft prospects.
Kind of this Skoronski boring argument. If my quarterback is boring, that's okay too.
Yeah, like they may not do something great, but they just do everything well. Like I will take that on my team every time.
Yep. So the New York Giants, speaking of quarterbacks.
So I'm interested to get your thoughts on Emmanuel Forbes, the cornerback from Mississippi State, because I had a ton of fun watching him. His athleticism jumped off the screen.
Yep.
He's very light though. He's 6'1", 166 pounds, but that's the one thing that moves me off of him a little bit, but his length, his speed, his ball skills.
How about the ball skills, by the way?
You said what?
How about the ball skills, by the way?
Yeah,
How
that's what I was
numbers,
saying.
by the way?
His length, his speed, and his ball skills, they just all scream like, hey, that's an NFL corner. It's 6 pick sixes.
Yeah.
Like that's in college.
14
That's
interceptions and 6 interceptions returned for
man.
touchdowns, which I believe is an FBS record.
Yeah, I'm in on that. I get that he's light, but man, there are guys breaking down physical boundaries every day in the NFL. I'm taking a swing on Emmanuel Forbes for the Giants.
You know what they have in NFL kitchens?
What's that?
Protein shakes.
Hey, there we
You know
go.
what they have in NFL buildings?
Weights?
Weight rooms. It's going to be okay. Yeah, I like that pick. I have no problem. 26th overall, the Dallas Cowboys. Dan Quinn, who I know very well from his time in Seattle, is a wizard with linemen. He knows how to stunt them. He knows how to get them in position to succeed. He's made the most out of guys like Osa Odigizua, but that's a very light interior defensive line. So, and I did defensive linemen, my reviews for them last week. And the more I watched Brian Bracey from Clemson, the more I thought, well, you'll know this as an NFC West guy. 2 words kept coming to mind when I watched this tape. Darnell Dockett. Think about that for a second.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, this guy is a problem. Had some injuries, had some, his sister had a cancer battle. He's been through it, and he just keeps coming back and kicking everybody's ass. I like his on-field. I like his off-field. And he's got some work to do with his hands, but I think right away he is a one-gap wrecker. And over time, he looks like an all-pro to me. I mean,
wow.
Some guys just have that look about them. And the more I watch Brissy, the more I'm thinking someone's going to get him in the late first, and 2 or 3 years from now, when everyone does redrafts, he'll be in the top 10.
Why do you like him less than Kalijah Kancey?
I think Kalijah Kancey is more dynamic.
Okay.
Like right off the snap.
Okay.
Now, Brissy got a lot of quick pressures, but it wasn't always because of that. He has a good sense of where to go to get mobile quarterbacks. He's a good tackle for loss guy. I think Kancey is a bit more twitchy, a bit more sudden, but not by much.
Okay.
So, if the Seahawks took Bracey and the Cowboys took Kancey and we flipped 20 and 26, that wouldn't surprise me either. So It's not like I like Kancey so much better. It's just kind of where things stood. In my defensive tackle rankings, I had Kancey second and him third. So
okay. So pretty even flip of a coin type of
pretty
thing.
Much.
Okay. Number 27, the Buffalo Bills. They lose Tremaine Edmonds in free agency, so I have them replacing him with an off-ball linebacker, Trenton Simpson, out of Clemson. I know that Drew Sanders is another guy that the linebacker out of Arkansas.
He's more of an edge guy, though. He's not. I mean, he's still learning to be a linebacker. He was an edge guy to Alabama. He transferred to Arkansas. He's not really the off-ball linebacker they need. So I like him better.
Yeah, and I am all about, again, I'm going to bring this back to the Niners. A big reason that the 49ers defense has been as good as it's been is because of Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw on the second level.
There you go.
If your linebackers can cover, it dramatically changes what your defensive line is doing. It changes what your secondary is doing. It opens up the world for a defensive coordinator when you have a linebacker that can just carry a receiver on an underneath route. And I think that Trenton Simpson is capable of that. There's, some concerns with his run stopping ability, and he's not that prototypical downhill run stuffer, but that stuff you can kind of figure out. I think he's going to be a really good coverage linebacker day one in the NFL. And I think he's going to be a really fine replacement for Tremaine Edmonds.
He can take, he'll play slot overhang, like against Bunch.
Yeah.
He'll take the top guy up the seam.
Yeah.
He can blitz. He can do a lot of different things. And it's funny that he came from Clemson or Isaiah Simmons, because it's sort of that similar thing of like, okay, you can do 9 things. Well, how about that where you do really well? His NFL team will have to figure that out. I like that fit. Because the Bills certainly losing. And the thing with Tremaine Edmonds, I always thought if they had blitzed Edmonds more, he would have been even more effective. So maybe they'll do that with Trenton Simpson.
That's why I stayed off of Drew Sanders, because I felt like some of the holes in Tremaine Edmonds' game were going to be very similar to the holes in Sanders' game.
Sanders really can't cover yet. Now, 2 or 3 years down the road, when he gets to he's really just learning to be a linebacker. Yeah. So we have to,
And the Bills are trying to contend right now.
I don't have a first round grade on him, and that's why. But he could, be that guy in a couple of years, definitely. Yeah. Okay, 28. Cincinnati Bengals. They sign Orlando Brown Jr. Moving Jonah Williams and his 13 sacks and 45 pressures allowed to the right side isn't going to do it. So instead, ding, 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 I'm going to give them Darnell Wright, who pitched shutouts against Will Anderson Jr. and BJ Ojulari. I talked to him about this at the Combine. How to block Anderson's speed to power and Ojulari's ability to get around. Two completely different techniques. Back-to-back weeks. He was the one who studied the tape and figured it out. I was so impressed by this guy. I'm like, you put him on your right side, you're fine. Bengals did a lot last year for obvious reasons to improve their O-line. The Brown pick helps. Brown will lose guys in the bottom, the back half of the arc. Darnell Wright, another big guy, very nimble, very smart. I think with him on the right side, the Bengals finally sort of fix all their offensive line issues.
A Bengals offense with a stout offensive line is terrifying to think of.
Kind of scary. Yeah.
Like you're giving Joe Burrow time and Jamar Chase time to get down the field. Like that's, man.
Oof.
Yeah. If Darnell Wright is that good right away, the Bengals, who are already scary in the AFC, become even scarier.
Yep.
Number 29, absolutely. The New Orleans Saints. They got this pick from the Denver Broncos. This is where I have Lucas Van Ness falling to.
Yep.
Because he is still a project. There's those splash plays when you watch him where it's like, oh my God, get this guy on a team immediately. But then there's 3 or 4 plays where he's just kind of absent. And I think there's some development that still needs to happen, but his tools and his physical traits, and you see the strength and the size and the speed on tape. It's like, man, get that guy in the building and you can see where an NFL team would be like, we can turn this guy into an all-pro edge rusher. Yeah. Don't know if he's there yet, but I do think he's a first-round talent from a physical standpoint, and I think he goes to New Orleans. They need some edge help.
Yeah, and one of the things you do this is that you evaluate players long enough. You try and learn from mistakes. And when George Karlaftis came out of Purdue last year, I don't kind of a tweener size, didn't see a lot of bend. I saw speed and power, but that was kind of it. And when he went to the Chiefs and Steve Spagnuolo, who's a brilliant guy, kind of understood what to do with him, like, okay, I kind of didn't see everything he could be. So I kind of feel the same way about Van Ness. You and I were discussing this on Slack this week is, when a guy just is bigger and has speed and power, but not a lot of bend, I kind of, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold my hesitation on Van Ness until I see in the NFL what his coaches can bring out of him. The stuff you talked about on the positive side is great. I have some pretty serious concerns. I wouldn't put him in the first round myself. I'm doing my edge rankings right now, and he's in the middle of the pack. But when I'm this close to coming off being wrong about Karlaftis because he got in the right scheme, I kind of want to hold my water on this one. But that's kind of where I am with him.
Okay.
I mean, Dennis Allen, brilliant guy, knows how to run a defense. They've got some good coaches there. And Cam Jordan, who's kind of that sort of player.
Yeah. And I could see them too, maybe aiming for an edge player that they think would be ready to step in and be on the field day one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Van Ness is necessarily ready to do that as more than just like a situational pass rusher.
Yep.
Let's talk about the Eagles on the clock again at number 30.
They're going to get the edge I think is ready right now, and he's going to be better in the NFL than he was in college, and here's why. Will McDonald the fourth from Iowa State. Again, as I said, 6'4", 240. Played a lot inside the tackles in 3-man fronts. No. On the edge, he has surprising power, great bend, a spin move that is reminiscent of Dwight Freeney's, and I do not say that lightly.
Wow.
He comes in technique ready, very relentless to the pocket. Now, these are 5-man fronts. He goes from 3-man to 5-man fronts. He's got Hassan Reddick on the other side. How do you think that's going to work? He, I think he won't be talked about a lot, and then he'll get into training camp, and all of a sudden he, with a team like this, he's just demolishing everyone, and then he gets defensive rookie of the year. Like, where did he come from? Well, he came from a lot of stupid 3-man fronts. That's why.
Yeah, that's one of the 49ers just met with an edge prospect from Louisville. And I was watching him, and same issue. It's like, man, when he gets to kick out like to the edge and really rush the passer, he's very good. But when you're
the number 22, I'm drawing the blank on his name.
Yaya
Diaby,
yes.
Oh yeah, Diaby. Okay, yes.
Yeah, a lot of snaps as a 3-4 defensive end, and that's just not where you're going to get a good evaluation.
Well, if you're Miles Murphy size, it's okay, but yeah.
When you're 4-3 defensive end size, it's not necessarily going to work. I like any defensive lineman on the Eagles. Like they're gonna figure it out.
Yeah, and you've already got bare fronts in which the ends are on the outside shoulders of the guards to prevent double teams. Yeah. Now you've got Hassan Reddick and this guy on the edge. I mean, you're in trouble.
It's terrifying.
Go home.
All right. Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs on the clock.
Final pick 31 in the first round.
The Chiefs are like, when you start going through their needs or their roster, it's just like anything. Just do anything and they're good.
Yeah.
So I went with Jordan Addison, the wide receiver from USC. They lose Juju Smith-Schuster this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if Addison goes in the middle of the first round. Like he's not a big guy, but still he has all 3 levels. He can affect the game. He can play inside. He can play outside.
He's such a refined route runner is what I love about him.
He's just freaking good, man.
He will get open. I often say that your speed on the field isn't so much about how fast you are, it's how slow you make everyone else look.
Yes.
And when he's doing those subtle little route movements, the 4-3 corner is looking 4-6.
Yeah.
Which makes you look 4-1.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he does.
There are times where you'll watch a receiver, or this happens a lot with tight ends, where a tight end will put up a bunch of numbers, but then you go and watch and it's like, oh, it's a bunch of, he's wide open off play action, and but Addison's wide open all the time.
Yep.
And not because of play action and guys not knowing where to be.
No, it's stutter go and it's stick not. It's the complex stuff. It's the second and third level things, like you said, that really get him open.
He caught 219 passes for 3,134 yards and 29 touchdowns during his college career. He played a couple years at Pitt and then a year at USC. It wouldn't shock me if he was the guy, if the Giants want to go with a receiver at 25, or if it's the Vikings at 23, if they do go receiver. It wouldn't shock me at all if he was the guy. But if he falls to 31, I don't think Kansas City passes on him.
Well, we talk about vertical game and, stretch and spread and all that with Mahomes, but Andy Reid at his heart is a West Coast offense guy.
Yep.
He loves route technicians. So this would be a great fit.
Yeah. And the size, like that kind of stuff with Andy Reid, it's like, he's going to figure out how to make that guy effective.
Go ask Tyler Lockett how being, allegedly small has worked out for him.
Yeah. Pretty good little player, Tyler Lockett. So that's it. That's our mock. We did it.
Woo-hoo!
How do you think it went?
I think it went well. I'm happy with my mock.
Okay. All right. We're going to be grading this on draft night to see who gets what right.
Oh,
FYI.
I'm glad you told me.
The winner gets $100.
Ooh.
No, Doug, really appreciate
it.
This was a ton of fun. Make sure to check out all the stuff that Doug is doing at the Touchdown Wire right now. Your position rankings are out. Where are you in your position rankings? What's out and what's coming?
Finishing up edge today. And then I've got offensive tackles, interior offensive linemen, receivers, tight ends, running backs, quarterbacks, all before the draft. And then I do my top 50.
Excellent. A lot of grinding, a lot of film work coming in. Can't wait to see that stuff from you. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to 4 Down Territory. Make sure to check us out next week, and we will see you then.
Thanks, everybody.